For feedback to be truly effective, it has to be heard and implemented. The next step of the process is planning how to move forward. Specify next steps. For positive feedback, consider sharing the person's good work with others as an example or asking her to train or coach her colleagues on an area she's excelled in. It's easy to overlook such valuable opportunities when you're in the thick of daily work, but sharing the key to one employee's success may increase others' efficiency and motivation. For corrective feedback, after you and your direct report or colleague have identified the core issue that needs to be addressed, work together to develop an action plan for moving forward that is mindful of the root cause of the behavior. If, for example, you have discovered that your employee is always late to work because she has a long commute, you may be able to offer her the flexibility to work from home a few days a week. You can also emphasize the effect her behavior is having on others as added incentive to help her change her ways. If she discovers that her behavior is lowering the morale of those who are punctual, in addition to affecting her individual productivity, she may be more motivated to arrive on time. Here are other options to consider. Offer a carrot. Find more interesting and satisfying assignments for the employee to work on as an incentive to arrive on time. Use a stick. Require that she be prompt and establish explicit consequences for tardiness. For example, documenting the situation in a formal performance review, which could later hamper her chances for promotion. Seek an alternative. Explore the possibility of formally changing her hours so she can come in an hour later and work an hour later each day, or work from home 1 or more days per week. You might even institute a flexible schedule for the entire group, so that everyone has the option of arriving at work within a range of times. Whichever approach you take, confirm that you and the recipient are leaving the feedback session with the same understanding of what will come next. Therefore, you should summarize the plan. If there are multiple components, specify each one. Have the recipient show that she knows what the next steps are. She might demonstrate her understanding by restating them or by agreeing to something you have written down. Explicitly ask how she feels about the plan. If any points seem unresolved, be open to clarifying them or, if appropriate, revising them. Identify when and how follow-up will occur. Be as specific as possible. Set a time frame for achieving the primary goal and, if appropriate, smaller goals along the way. When specifying next steps, make sure that you and the recipient feel that the plan belongs to both of you. A sense of mutual ownership greatly increases the likelihood that the recipient will apply your feedback. Follow-up. For the sake of the employee, your team, and the organization, don't stop the process of change when the feedback session ends. After giving positive feedback, for example, continue to reinforce the good behavior. When others can learn from that behavior, follow up to arrange training or coaching sessions led by the individual you've praised. In cases of corrective feedback, continue to observe how the employee is doing and whether she is following the agreed-upon action plan. Specifically, you should check in regularly to ensure that the action plan is on track. Follow the schedule you outlined as closely as possible. Ask the employee to describe her progress. Encourage her to be frank about any obstacles she may be encountering, and do what you can to help remove them. Be explicit about any improvements that you're noticing. Offer praise and reinforcement to bolster that progress. Be frank if you notice that progress has been too slow or is not happening at all. Discuss specific options for getting the situation on track. Feedback is not a cure-all for all workplace ills. In some cases, you may discover that the feedback recipient just isn't changing his behavior, even after multiple feedback sessions. There are many reasons why this may happen. The employee disagrees with you, doesn't understand the need for change, or just doesn't care. If a problem persists despite vigilant and judicious follow-up, you may have to take additional, and in some cases more severe, measures. If things aren't improving, consider whether there's anything you might be doing to add to that problem. Were you clear enough when you gave your feedback? Did the recipient understand what he should be doing? And are you supporting him? Ask for help and advice from human resources, or, if you're not the person's manager, consider reaching out to his boss for assistance. If the behavior or lack thereof, continues, set up another feedback session, but include another person in the discussion as a witness, such as an HR representative. Document carefully what the person says and agrees to, as well as how he behaves and misbehaves. If there is no improvement, that person might not be the right fit for your team or organization. If you have followed these steps and things progress to the point of termination, you'll know that you're doing the best thing for everyone involved. You, your team, and your organization do not need to suffer because of one person's behavior. For more guidance on how to proceed if the recipient doesn't react well to your feedback, see Handling Difficult Feedback Situations later in this book. Assess yourself. Don't forget your own role in the process. You too should be learning from feedback discussions. After a feedback session, use Table 3, Evaluating the Feedback Process, to evaluate how the meeting went and monitor how follow-up is progressing. Action plans, deliberate follow-up, and self-evaluation all reinforce the ongoing nature of constructive feedback. In short, the learning, for your colleague and for you, doesn't end after the door on the feedback session closes. When you act with that principle in mind, your example has an impact on your colleagues and direct reports, and everyone on the team benefits. Handling difficult feedback situations. In most cases, giving feedback proceeds smoothly and ends positively, even if the feedback is corrective. Sometimes, though, the situation may be more complicated. This chapter focuses on common feedback scenarios that present special challenges. Dealing with non-communicators. Some people are unresponsive when confronted with feedback, even when it is positive. The reasons for this may vary from simple fear of not being liked, to preconceived notions about the person delivering the feedback, to cultural expectations about how to respond to authority. Whatever the reason, you must still present the situation directly, even if it makes the person uncomfortable. When you need to give feedback to a quiet, shy, or otherwise uncommunicative person, patience is key. Don't rush the discussion, and don't try to force him to respond. Take deliberate pauses so the recipient has a chance to gather his thoughts and articulate them. Giving him enough space to think and speak can go a long way. As you proceed, make an effort to draw out the other person's point of view. Ask open-ended questions such as, "What was your rationale for telling the customer we couldn't help him?" Or, "How did you prepare for the presentation?" That requires more than a yes or no response. These types of questions, which are useful in any feedback situation, show an uncommunicative person that you want to hear and understand his point of view. In effect, you're saying, "My version of the issue is not the only one." Managing potentially volatile encounters. In contrast with non-communicators, some corrective feedback recipients may be openly defensive as soon as they're confronted with criticism. That defensiveness may stem from the recipient's desire to convey his understanding of the facts. As part of your process, as described in conducting a feedback discussion earlier in this book, you'll encourage him to share his point of view, and you should always be willing to acknowledge when you have the facts wrong. More often, however, defensiveness surfaces because productive and honest communication is breaking down, leading to the recipient to misperceive your motives and intentions. Think back to the first chapter of this book and imagine a different version of the scenario involving Bill, the usually efficient worker who is causing a bottleneck in the new production run. This time, when you outline the problem for Bill, he blows up, saying, "Why did you wait so long to tell me about this? I've got a new system now and it's too late to change it. Not to mention all those extra nights I've been working." When you try to explain that you have only just heard about the issue, Bill says it's time for his break and walks out of your office. Volatile encounters like this one can be hard to diffuse once they've begun. If you anticipate that your feedback session could become contentious, plan ahead. If the employee is already upset or angry, wait until he calms down before you engage him directly. Keep in mind, though, that even when surface emotions seem smooth before the feedback session, unsettled feelings can always bubble up, sometimes right before you meet with the person or during the encounter itself. write down your feedback points in advance so you won't get distracted and forget them during the session. Plan and rehearse how you will respond to outbursts before you initiate a conversation with the recipient. Table 2, Planning a Feedback Session, which appears earlier in this book, can be particularly helpful in preparing you for potentially difficult interactions. Plan to keep your feedback simple. Limit itself to 1 or 2 primary points. Volatile situations can be made worse when you catalog what the feedback recipient may perceive as a long list of grievances. Once you are in the session with the recipient, elicit the recipient's point of view and actively listen to his response to avoid confrontations during the discussion. Soften his defensive posture with phrases that show him that he's being heard, such as, "I hear what you're telling me," or "That's an important perspective." In addition, note points of agreement between you to establish common ground. Comments like, "You and I are on the same page about that," help to convey that you want to work with rather than against the other person. Remain composed. Speak slowly, calmly, and clearly. Avoid phrasing that might be interpreted as judgmental. For example, "Can you help me understand the point a bit better?" is much less confrontational than, "I have no idea what you mean." Redirect his focus away from the point of dissension. Work on building small agreements about basic details, what happened, when, and so on. In the case of Bill, you might start the conversation not by outlining the problem with the production run, but asking him to share how he thinks the new run is going. That would give Bill the chance to identify the problem before you do. If Bill does not volunteer the information, make clear that you have only just learned about the matter before describing it in detail. For example, "Bill, I just learned about a blip in our production run, and given your knack for efficiency, I just wanted to get your insights first." That approach will signal to Bill that you must trust him and appreciate his work, and assure him that you haven't been sitting on information for a long time before consulting him. And of course, rehearsing that line before you meet with Bill will help you deliver it in a neutral, non-judgmental tone. If Bill still becomes defensive despite his efforts, focus on details or facts about the production run that are objective and that you both agree upon. For example, "Yes, you're correct that the new run lasts 3 days." You will eventually get to the nub of the problem. But if you have established common ground first, you will be less likely to face a scenario in which Bill feels the need to storm out of the office. Giving feedback to high performers. Sometimes the toughest people to influence with feedback are those who do the best work. Giving stars effective feedback is essential to keeping them engaged and motivated, and to helping them reach their potential. Experts make clear that you should not bend the basic principles of giving feedback when dealing with top performers. No matter who is receiving the feedback, the advice in this book applies. But here are a few tips that can extend those basics to the unique needs of those top performers. Express gratitude for current performance. A star may not know how well she is doing. Always start your feedback session with a top performer by stating what she has accomplished and thanking her for it. Understand the cost of great results. It's important to understand how top performers have achieved their exemplary outcomes and at what cost. For example, did she forego other things, such as caring for her team, building alliances with others, or maintaining a healthy work-life balance in order to accomplish her goals? Don't assume the star is perfect. Everyone can improve, and you do a top performer a disservice if you fail to help her grow, particularly if you're her manager. Focus on what comes next in her career, and identify which obstacles might be standing in her way and how she can overcome them. Find out how you are doing. Ask questions such as, "How can I continue to support your high performance?" Or, "What can we do as an organization to keep bettering and supporting your great work?" By asking these questions, you'll encourage this key player to see you as an ally in her development. The better the performer, the more needs often she has and needs for the feedback. You and your organization depend on retaining top performers, so it is a wise investment of your time and energy to support and develop them. Giving them regular positive reinforcement and turning their attention to self-improvement allows your stars to celebrate success and work effectively toward what comes next. Giving corrective feedback to your boss. As we've discussed, providing feedback to a direct report or colleague can be delicate. Even trickier is giving corrective feedback to your boss. In these instances, a good rule of thumb is to tread lightly. A few tips can help. Identify the issue. Start by discussing the problem with your team members. Is this something that others are struggling with as well? Decide whether the matter is worth pursuing. Consider alternatives. If you and other members of your team can minimize the impact of your manager's behavior on your own, you may not need to approach her at all. Prepare carefully. If you must give your manager corrective feedback, collect objective data such as emails, job descriptions, events, dates, and so on, but present them as aids in finding a solution, not as an arsenal of defense. Make an appointment. Don't surprise your manager. Let her know that you want to discuss an important issue with her privately. Ask for a particular time and place to meet. Describe the behavior and its impact on the team. Give the feedback directly, accurately, and above all, respectfully. Describe the behavior you're targeting, not a personality trait. Avoid an accusatory tone of voice. Make a suggestion or a request, not a demand. Eventually move from a statement of the problem to a possible resolution. You will know whether your manager is ready to meet this challenge. If so, she may join you in considering various options for improving the situation. Check for commitment to change. Even if the process goes well, make sure you both are clear about the next steps. Ask something like, "So do we agree on how we'll adjust the process for the team moving forward?" Show your willingness to do your part. Giving corrective feedback to your boss is a relatively rare event, as are feedback situations that escalate to a crisis level. The best way to prevent the most difficult feedback situations from ever occurring is to create an overall work climate that encourages and welcomes feedback. We'll discuss that next.